A Bolivian mountain biking odyssey. Lucas, a 32-year-old accountant, had an unusual passion. While he spent his weekdays crunching numbers in a small-town office, his weekends were dedicated to the thrill of mountain biking. Along with his best friend, Ivo, Lucas would spend hours each Saturday exploring the rugged trails of the surrounding mountains. "I just love the feeling of being out in nature," Lucas would often say as he pedaled up a steep incline. "There's nothing quite like it." Ivo, a history teacher with a similar love for the outdoors, would nod in agreement. "It's like a meditation for me," he'd reply. "All my worries just seem to melt away." Their weekly rides had become a ritual, a chance to escape the monotony of their daily lives and connect with nature. But Lucas and Ivo had always dreamed of something bigger, a more challenging adventure. And so, they decided to plan a mountain biking trip to Bolivia. Bolivia, with its towering Andes mountains and vast salt flats, was a mountain biker's paradise. They had heard stories about the challenging trails and breathtaking scenery, and they couldn't wait to experience it for themselves. "Can you believe we're actually doing this, Ivo?" Lucas asked as they stood at the airport, their bikes packed securely in special travel cases. "It's still hard to believe," Ivo replied. "I've been dreaming about this trip for years." Their first few days in Bolivia were spent acclimating to the high altitude and exploring the charming city of La Paz. As they ventured further into the Bolivian countryside, the terrain became increasingly rugged. The trails were often steep and rocky, and the altitude made breathing difficult. But Lucas and Ivo were determined to conquer the challenges that lay ahead. "This is nothing like anything we've ever experienced back home," Lucas said as they pedaled up a steep hill. "I know," Ivo replied, panting heavily. "But it's worth it." Along the way, they met many friendly locals who were eager to share stories about their lives and their country. One old man told them about the time he had ridden his bike all the way to Argentina. A young woman showed them how to make traditional Bolivian food. "You guys are crazy for doing this," the young woman laughed. "These roads are dangerous." "That's what makes it fun," Lucas replied, grinning. One of the highlights of their trip was a ride through the Andes Mountains. The mountains were covered in snow, and the air was thin. As they pedaled higher and higher, they could see for miles in every direction. "This is amazing," Ivo said, his voice filled with awe. "I feel so small compared to nature." As they descended back down the mountain, they stopped to talk to a group of llama herders. The herders were friendly and invited them to share a cup of coca tea, a traditional Andean beverage. "This is the life," Lucas said, sipping his tea. "I could get used to this." Lucas and Ivo continued cycling on dirt roads that wound through majestic mountains. At every turn, a new scene unfolded: green valleys, snowy peaks, and traditional villages. The altitude was a constant challenge, but the beauty of the landscape pushed them forward. In a small village, they stopped to rest and refresh themselves at a natural spring. An elderly woman, wearing a colorful poncho and with a radiant smile, invited them into her adobe house. "It's so good to see you here. Come in and try our coca," she said, offering them a cup of coca tea, a traditional Andean drink that helps combat altitude sickness. "Thank you very much, ma'am," replied Lucas. "Your house is beautiful." "It's simple, but it's ours," she replied, proudly. "Here, we grow coca and quinoa. Quinoa is very nutritious and we make many dishes with it." The woman began to tell stories about life in the village, about the customs and traditions of her people. She explained that the women wove their own clothes with alpaca wool and that the men raised llamas and alpacas for wool and meat production. "And you, where are you from?" she asked. "We're from Brazil," replied Ivo. "We love nature very much and decided to explore Bolivia by bike." The woman smiled. "Nature is our mother," she said. "We must respect it and take care of it." Lucas and Ivo continued their journey, impressed by the wisdom and simplicity of that woman. In another village, they met a young llama herder. He invited them to have lunch at his house, where they tasted a typical dish called charque, dried llama meat. "Charque is very tasty," said Lucas, as he savored the food. "Yes, it's one of our most traditional foods," replied the herder. "We also eat potatoes, quinoa, and many vegetables." After lunch, the herder showed Lucas and Ivo how to shear an alpaca. They learned that alpaca wool is very soft and warm, and that it is used to make clothes and blankets. As they delved deeper into Bolivia, Lucas and Ivo felt increasingly connected to nature and the people they met along the way. They learned about the importance of water, land, and animals for local communities. In a small town in the mountains, they met an artisan who made traditional musical instruments. The artisan showed them how to make a pan flute, a wind instrument made of bamboo. "Music is the soul of our culture," said the artisan. "We play the pan flute at all our parties." Lucas and Ivo were fascinated by the music and learned to play some simple melodies. They spent the afternoon playing and singing with the artisan, feeling the joy of music and friendship. At the end of their journey, Lucas and Ivo said goodbye to Bolivia with a feeling of gratitude and fulfillment. They had explored stunning landscapes, met incredible people, and learned a lot about Bolivian culture and customs. "This was the best adventure of my life," said Lucas, as they looked out the plane window. "I agree," replied Ivo. "I'll never be the same person again." Back in Brazil, Lucas and Ivo continued to mountain bike, but now with a new perspective. They knew that nature was a precious gift and that they should do everything they could to protect it. And whenever they felt tired or discouraged, they would think of their adventures in Bolivia and feel inspired to continue exploring the world.